This is Renee Ray from the Atlanta Regional Commission. You're the mobility manager with the, and sorry, I want to make sure I get this correct, with the Aging and Health Resources Division. Renee's here to talk to us specifically about Simply Get There, a new website that they're rolling out. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here this morning. I'm really impressed by the diversity of people in the audience. I wasn't really sure what to expect, so I had a couple of questions before I get started because I can tailor my talk based on the kind of knowledge level in the room. So could you raise your hands again if you're a student? Okay. If you're a faculty or a research scientist at Tech or anywhere else? Okay. And if you're like a practitioner or private sector, kind of, okay. Okay. And do you work in transportation? Do you have expertise in transportation? Okay. How about IT? Okay. And how about working with older adults? Okay. All right, great. So I can blow through a couple of these slides pretty quickly. So what I'm going to do over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes explaining why ARC was interested in developing this website. I'm going to spend about 15 minutes actually demoing the site to you and kind of pointing out some of the features on basically the 4 web pages that are the website. And then I'm going to talk about a couple of like short-term and long-term next steps for what we want to do with the website. And then I guess at 10:30, we kind of start a Q&A session, a discussion. Is that right? Okay. This is my first one. So Elena was smart. She just like grabbed me early on and was like, "Will you present?" So I'm. It's a good skill on somebody else to facilitate these kind of meetings. So how many people have heard of the Atlanta Regional Commission and have some idea of what we do? Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, great. So a lot of you are familiar with Atlanta Regional Commission. Every state has federally designated metropolitan planning organizations, and every area also has area agencies on aging. So the state of Georgia and around 1/3 of the states in the nation have both of those under one roof. So we have kind of a built-in advantage to working on human service transportation because we already have people with expertise in older adults and people with disabilities and people with expertise in transportation kind of under one roof. But this kind of describes a couple of the other programs of work that we have at ARC. So I can go quickly through these couple of slides because since a lot of you work with older adults, you have some familiarity with what kind of population spread we have now in the Atlanta region and what we anticipate having in the future. But long story short, by 2030, the Atlanta region is going to have 1 in 5 residents over the age of 60. We're also looking at, I think, we've got about 4.5 million people now. I think we're going to add 2 to 3 million over the next 20 to 30 years. And as you know, living in Atlanta, our built environment was basically designed post-World War II. It was designed for cars, for people who had a way to get around. About 90% of our current older adults don't live near public transportation. And most older adults, men will outlive their ability to drive by about 7 years. Women will outlive it by about 10 years. So what we're looking at is a lot of people who are not going to be able to get where they need to go on their own. And in fact, we already see that transportation is the #1 unmet need for older adults in the region. So what are we doing about it? We have a Human Services Transportation Plan. It was something that was mandated by DOT starting in 2007 because, again, we have both the AAA and the MPO under the same roof. There's a lot of collaboration and a lot of multiple funding sources that we pull from in order to try to bring services to populations who cannot drive. So we have money from FTA, 5310, and other Federal Transit Administration sources. We have money through the Older Americans Act. We also can pull some state and some county resources. And so basically we have some flexibility. One thing I find interesting is there's a lot more flexibility on the Older Americans Act side than there is on the transportation side, so that gives us a little bit more room for innovation compared to our colleagues who work downstairs in the MPO. One thing I want to point out too is that I think it's very easy when you look at transportation to just focus on services, providing a ride, getting somebody where they need to go, but we already don't have the money to provide a ride to everybody who needs one. And as you'll be aware if you work with federal funding, what we're likely to see in the future is more demand and less resources. So we need to do the best job we can figuring out how to use those resources responsibly. So we're focusing on planning and on thinking about how to allocate scarce resources in addition to just thinking about how to provide the most rides to the most people. So okay, great. So, I mean, you know, common sense, what we want to do is try to think about what are the cheapest ways that we can help people get around and put the most people on those that we can, okay? So the cheapest thing is going to be fixed route public transit, but again, 90% of older adults don't actually live near public transit. Kind of next cheapest option is going to be carpool and vanpool. After that, it's going to be volunteers and vouchers. So a lot of the programs, the work that we do at ARC are funding those volunteer and voucher programs and also supporting carpools and vanpools. Douglas County has a great vanpool program. And then basically at the last would be dedicated service. So a lot of county-based agencies in the region provide that kind of dedicated service. And then of course, most expensive is going to be taxis. But you know, in some cases, that's the only solution that's going to work for somebody. But so basically that's our programmatic approach to how we're trying to allocate resources. So we started this work plan in 2007. We've been improving it since then, but one of the real challenges we had was trying to actually organize who are all of these providers, what is actually happening on the ground. So one of the things that the Simply Get There website does is help us pull some of that together, get it better organized and get a better idea of, you know, what services exist and where we might like to see some improvements. So basically the Simply Get There website was funded by an FTA program, Veterans Transportation and Community Living Initiative. They funded, I think, a couple of dozen of these across the country. So most of these services, people trying to get these rides, establish their eligibility, get services, are done through phone calls. And so basically FTA wanted to take it to the next level and have it done through a website instead. So it's a responsive website, which means if you've got a smartphone and you want to pull it up, feel free. And so we began this project, I think 2011 or 2012. We contracted it out to Cambridge Systematics to build the website for us. And basically, if you think about something like Google Maps, Google Maps will tell you some of the transportation modes you can take, but it doesn't include specialized transportation. So that's really the difference that Simply Get There provides over any of the sort of standard mapping software that you may be familiar with. And the other important thing is that at this time, it's what we're calling a trip discovery website, which means that you can see what your options are, but you don't have the ability to make a reservation on the site. So that's something that I'm going to talk about in the next steps. And again, because it includes the specialized transportation, anyone can use the site, but a lot of our marketing is targeted towards HST population, so that's older adults, persons with disabilities. We've actually just started working with limited English proficiency populations. That's a real area of growth in terms of demographics in the region, so I just led a focus group last week with CPACs, who works with different populations in Gwinnett, DeKalb, Cobb County. Okay, so we're going to go to the website. Okay, so if you're familiar with Kayak, it's a little bit the same idea. No? Okay, that didn't work. I don't know what to push to get the website to come up. Sorry. Yeah, it's up on my screen, but.
Trying to get this up there?
Mm-hmm.
Monitor.
Just duplicate.
Yeah. But I don't have a. No, I don't have a. I lost the cursor. I had the right thing.
Where'd you put it?
I don't know. It wasn't there. There it was. I saw it. It went. Okay, can anybody find this cursor?
Design and technology, you say? For
It's down on that bottom row.
Did you want to come up here, Patty? And
Just did something.
The cursor just
It won't
got
let us.
gone. See if you can hit.
all right,
Brian,
got it.
you-
It's
There it
It's
is.
down in that purple
No.
rectangle right
Now you got it.
yeah, but I didn't see it.
there.
Sometimes it thinks that there is another screen to the side.
Yeah.
Right, but we lost the cursor.
Here, probably find it right here. Usually, you change the screen right here.
What is the?
It's just designed for help getting.
First question.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. No problem. Okay, so it's a fairly simple website. How many of you have used Kayak? Okay, great. So you can see we've basically got 4 different screen options. Similar with Kayak, you've got, let's see. Near the bottom of the page, you see how you can choose, you can do round trip or one way. You've got all of the different options. And so the specialized services would be the difference for what you might traditionally see on something like Google Maps. Let's see. The trip purpose is really for our reporting purposes, but based on actual usage, nobody really uses it for anything, so we're not collecting great data from there. But one thing that's interesting is you can base it on either when you want to arrive, say if you've got a doctor's appointment, or you basically have different search criteria that you can use to choose what is actually important to you. One thing that's really interesting down here is that if you were someone, say, Fox Theater, and you had a show at 8 p.m. on Saturday night, and you thought that there might be a number of people who might be interested in coming, you can click on this. You can put, arriving 8 p.m. Saturday night, arriving at the Fox Theater. If you click on this, you get a unique URL, which you can use in an email blast that you send out and say, don't want to drive to the Fox? Try this website instead. And it kind of pulls up automatically. I'd enter my home address, and then I kind of see what are my options to get to the Fox on time for my show. So that's a nice little marketing piece. So the URL is crazy, but that, you can make it, it's a little hyperlink, you make it look better. Couple of other things. You can sign up and log in if you want. So say you're someone who has something like a dialysis appointment or a chemo treatment, and maybe it's an unfamiliar route. You want to save it so that you can come to it multiple times and try to look at different options for getting there. You can sign up, log in, it'll save your trips for you. Or for instance, maybe if you're a caregiver who is looking for a couple of different people who may need that sort of routine transportation, you can save trips for different people by using that sign up. So we're going to keep specialized services. If I unclicked specialized services, I would skip the options page, but I'm going to show you the whole site, so we'll keep on here. I'm going to show departing from my house. Okay. So you can see it kind of auto-populates with destinations. This will be an easy one, but it'll show a lot of different options. So this will be my work address. And I want to arrive. I'm going to give myself a couple more options and say I don't have to be there today. I need to get there on Friday in the afternoon. Nope, in the afternoon. And round trip.
Do you have any accommodations for visual impairment?
We have done a 508 compliance audit of the site. I can't give you all the specific details, but we have done a 508 compliance so that the site is usable by people who may have different.
Because you don't have audio capability where they can speak. Yeah. I think you guys were talking about that. A couple years ago.
Okay. So this is your options page. And the reason why we have this options page is because some of the transportation providers that are on this site have different eligibility requirements. So for instance, veterans may be eligible for a particular transportation service. People above a certain age may be eligible for some county-based transportation services. And we also have, some of the providers have wheelchair accessible vehicles and some do not. So there are some different search criteria here. And again, I want to say, I have my notebook every time we do this presentation, we get requests from things that weren't on the initial website that people are interested in. The most recent one was someone said it would be nice to have an option to click if you need an escort to ride with you, because that sometimes makes a difference. So we're keeping a running list of things that could be improved on the site. So if you think of anything during the presentation, let me know and I'll jot it down after we're done. And so again, the sort of standard criteria is going to be not sure. So I'm going to click yes on a couple of these just to bring up a couple of different options. And
We've had people be refused for transportation from various agencies at the VA because they had their service dogs with them and the people wouldn't take the dog in their vehicle.
One of the challenges of doing this is that I think there are a number of ways that ADA is supposed to be implemented and ways that it may not be, and working in this field, you uncover a lot of challenges to that and a lot of ways in which things may not be done exactly the way that they should be, and that's kind of an ongoing challenge to the sort of service.
That's a good one at the bottom. Do you need assistance to your front door?
There are some providers that provide door-to-door instead of what we call curb-to-curb and are permitted to give some assistance. So while this page loads, the way that we come up with these options, we have two sites that we use. One of them is called ESP. It's a database that ARC developed a number of years ago. We run an aging and disabled resource center that gets 80,000 phone calls a year. So basically what we did was build a website and populate it with any potential resource, service, answer to a question that our colleagues may get during these 80,000 phone calls. It's actually used around the state, so that some of the transportation providers you see here come from that ESP website and database, and then some of them come from Open Trip Planner, which is the sort of foundation for atltransit.org, if you've heard of that website. So that includes things like Georgia Commute Options, Greta, all the various transit agencies that provide services in the region. So as you can see, I mean, I've chosen a trip that has a lot of different transportation options. So this can be a pretty overwhelming list. So there are ways that I can basically look at these options here and start to prioritize based on what I think is the most important. So the most expensive fare that came up is $17. This is because it's a very short route. But if I said I can't afford any more than $9, I scroll on this and that kind of reduces my options, so I see what's cheaper to me. Maybe I say I'm in a hurry, I can't take 47 minutes to try to get to the office. I need it to be done in 28 minutes or less. Or I might say I cannot walk 1.68 miles, that's ridiculous. I need to get it down here half a mile. I think I can walk half a mile. And so you kind of end up with, okay, well, maybe I don't like any of these options. Maybe what I chose, I'm gonna need to change a little bit. Maybe I could spend a little bit more money as long as I don't have to walk more than half a mile. So you kind of have all of these different options so that you can prioritize whatever service is gonna be most appropriate to your needs. Let's see. So maybe I want to choose a taxi on the way there. Nope, sorry. So I'm going to just select the taxi. And what is this option right here? It just looks like a car, right? So I click on that. Whoa, sorry. This shows driving. Well, I'm not driving. This option's not going to work for me. This option is carpooling. Well, I'm not going to be able to figure out a carpool between now and then. So I'm going to have to change some of my options to try to figure out if there's a better way to get home than taking a taxi. Okay. So now I'm coming up with some better options for the way to get home. I'm willing to take Marta home, so I'm going to select this one. Okay. So now I'm to the 4th page, and based on what I've chosen, again, this is trip discovery, so once you get to the last page, all you get is the information for how you could actually call or go to a website and find out how you would take a particular trip. So because I chose taxi, this just basically lists all of the different taxi companies that are available. So again, do I want to call 10 taxi companies to try to find a ride? Well, that may be what I end up doing because that is what's coming up on the website. This is.
How come Isaiah's first?
I don't know how they, I don't know why it's not alphabetical. Let's see. So for the return trip, I've chosen Marta. So this actually shows me the whole distance where it shows me, here's the pink, this shows me walking. I've got the blue, this shows what my transit route is. So if I'm someone who's a little nervous, I'm not used to taking Marta, or I've never taken this route before, this kind of shows me the entire way that I would go. And then it shows me in the pink, kind of getting off the bus, walking back to my house. And this gives me a little information about how much Marta is going to cost me, and gives me the website to go and figure out how to buy a pass. So if I don't like these options, I can just go back to the options page and pick some other ones. If I feel like these are going to work for me, then I have the option of either printing or emailing. So I can print it if I want to have a hard copy to take with me on my route. I can email it either to myself or maybe to a daughter or somebody to say, look, I've got a ride to the doctor. This is what I'm actually going to be doing. Now, you know, just to have a little peace of mind. So that in a nutshell is what the site is. We had a soft launch in March. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the marketing that we're doing for it and what our plans are for the future, but this is what we've got now to work with, and this is the site. Okay. Okay. So since we launched in March, we've had some train the trainer sessions. So as the Area Agency on Aging, we work with a number of RSVP volunteers, which are usually kind of younger retired people, a lot of times had a professional background, and they do a number of really great volunteering services for us. So we've had 23 so far go through a train the trainer session. We've got another one scheduled tomorrow with 11 people. We've had, the last time I did a reporting, we had 1,027 unique trips, and we've got some written collateral that we hand out at events. So we've had 7 public events with this many thousand potential users. The outreach that we've done, The outreach that we've done to our original partners, these are people like Cobb Community Transit, Disability Link, Goodwill, the VA, Salvation Army. So we've gone back to our original partners who helped us with focus groups when we were originally trying to build the website to say what would be helpful. So we're doing trainings for those employees if they're interested, and for any supportive services staff that they may work with. We're also reaching out within our existing network to private and public housing staff. We're looking at parish nurses, trying to build relationships with them, and then general, again, supportive services staff. So whether that's case managers, caregivers, and of course the county-based agencies that we're already working with. Actually, I pushed something on the. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. So for our longer term future plans for the website, we were awarded a grant from the Federal Transit Administration about a month ago, and we're going to be spending the next 18 months working on how to take the site from trip discovery to what is sometimes called either trip triaging or a trip exchange hub. But in planning, we talk about the highest and best use, or the most fitting and appropriate resources. So right now, if I go on Simply Get There, I pick the priorities that work best for me. But what we would like to have in the future, and what is a system whereby we see trips come in, we have people who are eligible to receive services, and we work with them to try to figure out what is the best solution for them. So based on the resources that we have available, where the person actually lives and where they need to go. So we're going to be working with Ride Connection. They are out of Portland, Oregon. They are kind of the national leader in human service transportation work. They've been doing this for about 30 years. So they're going to be partnering with us almost as like sort of individualized technical assistance to talk about, they have not yet got a trip triaging system as a sort of online software application, but they're in the kind of final stages of putting that together and getting it on their website. So we're going to be working with them, and we're also going to put out an RFP to find a software developer who can help us try to figure out what that website might look like. So what we have the money to do from FTA is almost like a thought or a planning exercise where we're going to work for 18 months to find out what capabilities does this online software application need to have, how should it be designed, and then once we're finished, go after funding to say, we know what it is that we need, we know what capabilities the site needs to have and how it needs to function, so we can put out an RFP to actually have the site built. So, so again, what we'll be doing is building or creating a sort of, I don't think it's a wireframe, I'm sorry, I'm not going to know all the technical terms, but what we're going to be doing is creating an online software application that's going to coordinate all of the different agencies and providers that are currently in Simply Get There in a way that's seamless to the user. So in a way in which it's easier for people to try to get access to the transportation services that are out there. So that's what we're going to be working on over the next year or two. So this is my phone and email at the bottom here, and I think we're going to have Q&A for the next little while. All right. Okay.
Question for you.
Yes.
So from an ARC perspective, how close is Atlanta getting to having the different transportation units like Gwinnett County, Cobb County, and MARTA speaking the same language from like a transaction point of view, and so where people are able to load the same voucher or the same card for different usage? Is that anywhere in the near future or still a long ways out?
That is an area of opportunity. We did some great work with a consulting firm who helped us with a lot of the research. So you mentioned vouchers, for instance. What makes sense to me as someone who might take a taxi is, okay, right now I've got Uber, it's got my PayPal, I've got my smartphone, I put everything in there. Could you not have a taxi driver who has one of those little smart readers and you swipe your card and you get on the taxi? Nobody in the US is actually doing this for these voucher programs. Everyone is still using paper. So one of our goals is definitely how can we make it easier to administrate these programs, because we're working, and Maria is actually leading those, the different 5310 contracts which we give to providers around the region, and the administrative burden to provide these services in some cases is almost prohibitively large. So I think that because this is a new service, it tends to be run very differently than you might imagine other transportation services being run. And so we're doing a lot of work with those providers and with other agencies who might be interested in providing these services to talk about, you know, what are some best practices for budgeting? What are the ways in which you can have more money actually going to the service and less on the overhead? How would your process be different if you know, were able to cut your overhead budget by, you know, some percentage? So there's a lot of the providers tend to be, you know, nonprofits or pieces of county-based agencies, and because it's fairly new, everyone is learning. So people are very interested in doing anything they can to help these populations, but what we're trying to do is give them the tools to succeed and to be able to be competitive in applying for funding and being able to do a good job allocating as many resources as possible in actual service rather than administration. But yeah, again, so I mean, I think that far more challenging than actually, you know, working with Ride Connection and the software provider is going to be that the website is only going to be as successful as the amount of providers that we get to participate. So, you know, the whole point of trip triaging is saying, you know, well, maybe someone is actually eligible for MARTA or CCT or Gwinnett paratransit. Does someone, you know, is this somebody who's unfamiliar with using transit? Do we have volunteers who do travel training who can either participate in a little group class or could get some one-on-one mentoring? Where we're scheduling a meeting with Cobb County to go out there and work with their senior services and their transit staff. But again, that's going to be 10% of the older adult population. So is there a way that volunteer driving can be scaled up, can be expanded to different parts of the region? Because volunteer driving is going to be highly localized. I'm not going to be interested in driving that many miles outside of my little, you know, area that I'm comfortable with. So it's a very challenging space to work in. And there are it's hard to kind of structure our work plan and think about what's the most desperate need and how do we work on that, because it's kind of an overwhelming task. But, yes?
You mentioned in the beginning Uber and Lyft and those network transportation services, but it didn't come up in the options that you've selected. Are those already integrated into the system? And why didn't those come up as options?
Those are not currently in the system. Another challenge to the ESP database is right now it's opt-in. So one of the things that we would like to do is actually work with Uber and Lyft and say, would you like to be a part of this database? One of the challenges we had in this was we had providers who said, don't include me in this database. I've already got a waiting list. The last thing I need is more people calling me for a ride when I don't have a service to provide them. So that is where I think there's a great opportunity with Uber and Lyft, because they are not, at that point, to my knowledge, they would be somebody who would have a lot more capability, a much greater supply and ability to meet the needs of these people.
I actually have two questions. The first, you mentioned caregivers using the website. In terms of the saved trips, is there an option to title it if they wanted to title it with a client's name? There is. Mm-hmm. And also, did you test this website with the elderly to see how easy they found it to use?
Yes, we did conduct focus groups. That was actually before I was hired at ARC. So I believe we had several focus groups with different populations to see how usable the website design would be for them. But again, one challenge is that people with disabilities tend to have a very high, to my knowledge, a very high access to computers, knowledge of using smartphones, whereas with older adults, it's very different, especially depending on how much older you go, and because a lot of people that we might want to work with are low income. So that's why a lot of our marketing has been targeted to supportive services staff to say, maybe the seniors who come to your senior center are not very tech savvy, but if you, as the senior center manager, know how to use the website, you can actually work to help with them and show them a couple of different providers that they may be able to use. So we thought that would be a great way to expand our reach. Yes.
When you receive the, I guess through the website or the 80,000 calls, what percentage of those are the person who needs the ride or someone trying to help a person who needs a ride? So how do you split those use scenarios?
I don't know the percentage, but I know that we do get both. A lot of, like for instance, a lot of times we get out of state calls, especially after the holidays. You know, I went home to visit my mom in Gwinnett County and her health has declined in a way that I hadn't realized. So what is going to be available to me that I can help her with? I don't have a percentage though. Yeah. Yes.
So this is a very helpful site, but one of the things that a lot of people face are real-time issues that you cannot put into a site which doesn't have real-time feeds. And we know MARTA often is delayed. We have accidents on the roads. So there could be various kinds of things that might disrupt the ride. So is there any thinking about how you can put in some real-time feeds into the site?
I don't think that's a question that's come up before, but I'm gonna jot that down because I think that would be interesting. The Open Trip Planner software that is one of the foundations for the site is something that ARC Greta developed it and we now manage it. But I don't know if that would be a possibility for the future. I'm gonna note that down actually. Okay.
Are you planning to have any API connection, maybe URL connection that would go directly to the second page, to the options? The reason why I'm asking because some of the providers who currently utilize different pieces of software, different web applications, they might be interested to go directly from that database where they know the starting point and the end point where a client needs to go and provide their portals and connect it directly to yours. And that may significantly increase the utilization, and you will be able to utilize basically different pieces of software connecting to yours.
I think that's a possibility for the phase 2. I don't know that that's something that we could do now. Yeah. Okay.
And do you have a way to, in the future, incorporate feedback from people who have used different ride systems to sort of give feedback about the different options that they've selected?
Yes. We have I know we have a help button, and we also have a place to leave feedback for, a lot of times it's a little more specific, you know. I know that there's a taxi company that works in Henry County, but a lot of times it is too for general complaints or concerns about the site. Yeah.
I guess, I mean, so if you're looking at, say, the difference between taking MARTA somewhere or the taxi, to be able to sort of see what people who've used those different options, what their general rating of those different options is?
We haven't talked about a rating system. That's not something that's come up. All right, anyone? Yeah.
Do you have thoughts around a reminder system for a person to leave? So I need to be somewhere at 3, I need to go catch MARTA. Is there any, just thought maybe they would want a reminder, if there was a way to send it?
Yeah, I haven't thought about a reminder, but I like the idea. I'm trying to think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion.
You could even auto call.
Leave now to walk now, or if your taxi's due in 10 minutes, or.
I know it's possible. I think another contract that I'm managing, they're using Route Match software, and I think that, I mean, it's an upgrade, but I think that Route Match has the ability to say, you know, I see that you've got a vehicle that's scheduled to arrive in 20 minutes, so it sends kind of like an automated voicemail.
That will probably allow you to connect it to the real-time option. If there is any kind of accident, that it would prompt prior to that. that you need to leave earlier than it was planned before.
And it looks like it's on Google Maps, so they already have some real-time
Yeah.
planning on
Isn't that
that, those
too?
routes
Yeah.
currently, so
Mhm.
you're probably not far off.
So we're working on an app with the airport that's going to do something similar for people to get around the airport, telling them how long waits are and routes to follow for shorter waits or shorter paths. I'm hoping to also get that done with MARTA. I mean, MARTA has the next train arrive in that app, but it doesn't tell you how long it's going to take you to get to the next one. So, that's just something that we might talk about integrating or trying to figure out how to integrate in. It's a little more difficult at the airport because you need sensors and beacons or Wi-Fi to get information, but in the public environment, you can use Wi-Fi, wireless.
Is the ARC seeking phase 2 testing, like another round of user testing to continuously improve that, or are they seeking funding for that in the near future?
We are always seeking funding.
Us too.
Okay, yeah. We should collaborate and find somebody with some money. We had not thought about additional user testing, but I know that just in the course of doing the training, we have come up with a number of different suggestions. The contract that we have with Cambridge allows some kind of limited maintenance and upgrades, so like every few weeks they're doing another iteration of the site that has some improvements. So we do have the ability to incorporate some changes now over the next year, but I don't believe that we have funding specifically for additional user focus groups.
And did you say that you're using Right Connection because they've been really successful in Portland?
We're going to be working with
Okay.
them.
And
Yeah.
so, do you
Well-
know why they've been so successful?
I think a lot of times in this work, you need a champion. So they've had this incredible executive director who founded the nonprofit about 30 years ago. They've also been partnering with their TriMet Transit Authority for I think at least a decade. And there are a lot of, Portland, it's built to a much denser level. I think that they have a tri-county area, whereas of course we have a 10-county, unless you count the MSA, which is like 29 counties or something. So there are some advantages in that way, but I think a lot of it is that they've had leadership for 30 years for someone who has a passion for this and has been kind of pushing the envelope with innovation for decades. So we're excited to be working with them. We haven't actually launched the project yet, but I've got bi-weekly calls with their IT manager to start learning more about what it is they do.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks everyone. I was really pleased to have this opportunity. Yeah.